Sorry this is taking so long, but I just felt so drained and not wanting at all to record. I'll talk a bit about that once it gets to the actual video. This was recorded like, what, a week after I recorded the first half of the narration. But I have to rearrange. I'm gonna have to start dropping some stuff in my life so I can keep my mental state. Like I have work, taekwondo, school, and then some other miscellaneous stuff. So I'm gonna have to drop like probably taekwondo and some of the miscellaneous stuff just so I can keep myself together. So yeah. These narrations are going to continue until I am done with Angels and Demons. But I'm probably not going to do the Fury of Heaven and Hell, at least not at this moment. Because it's just, maybe next summer, but it just, my schedule is too chaotic and there's too much stuff going on. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the video.
Okay, sorry that this is coming out way too late, and I appreciate the comment that said I should just take take the time I need to make good videos, but I'm always tired and want to die, so it's not gonna get any better. I'm just gonna do what I can. I'll probably just end up. Well, actually, this is probably what I should have done in the beginning. I record a bit of reading each day, and then piece it all together. Because, I can spare 5-10 minutes a day. So yeah. The Arc Mine. A pilot-exclusive ordnance that consists of a single-point laser-activated mine that explodes in a singular direction away from the point of attachment, leaving the surface relatively unharmed. It also turned out to be very good as an impromptu launcher. The second that Ozpin activated the launch pad, Daemon simultaneously detonates the arc mines he had strapped to his feet, propelling him hundreds of meters into the air, high above the cloud line. He smiled under his helmet as he watched the ground speed below him, the entirety of the ground being covered in red forest except for a single spot a couple kilometers away. Wait a minute. I've seen that before. It was the same ruins they had rested at the day they warped here. With a grin, he felt the subtle pull of gravity slowly begin to pull him closer to the ground. Angling his body, he set up in the skydiving position, and the contrails of clouds began forming behind his hands and feet. The ground was coming towards him surprisingly fast, and he saw 2 parachutes slowly descending to the ground. He cleared the tree canopy and twisted in midair, landing on the ground and rolling a bit, his exoskeleton taking the brunt of the force. Never gets old. He unholstered his Kraber AP, loaded around into the chamber, and began walking towards the ruins. 40 minutes later, unfortunately for Daemon, the ruins were far further away than he had expected. Along the way, he had to activate his cloak, much to the dismay of those watching, and managed to sneak past all the grim packs. He walked out of the tree line of the forest and came into a clearing where the ruins were located, keeping his cloak activated. As he observed, he saw a ring of the artifacts were spread around the ruins, chess pieces. Instead of running in and getting it over with, he decided to wait for his partner to arrive, rather than setting off a trap to get himself killed. A couple of minutes later, he heard a shout from across from where he was. He looked to see Rosaleen slowly backing away from the tree line, smart pistol aiming into the bush. A couple of moments later, 3 Beowulfs charged into the forest. Charged straight towards her. A couple moments later, 3 Beowulfs charged out of the forest straight towards her, only to be cut down a moment later by her pistol. With 3 bullet holes in their heads, her shoulders slumped, indicating that she had been chased for some time. As he watched, she saw another Beowulf slowly creeping out of the bush behind her. Rosaleen had no idea about the threat. He quickly pulled out his Craver and sighted the Grim. It jumped with a roar, causing Rosaleen to jump away from it. Bracing for the hit, time seemed to slow down as it jumped at her. She saw the individual hairs move on its head as it roared in a battle cry. She couldn't do anything but watch as it inched closer to her face. As she continued to watch her own demise, a bullet came out of nowhere and the bullet impacted into the chest of the jumping beast. As it impacted, the body of the Grim was shunted sideways from the sheer force of the bullet impact. It never left the body as the bullet exploded within the Grim's body, turning it into a piñata. Rosaleen moved her arms to cover her from the gore that splattered across the forest, chunky bits of the Beowulf splattering across her limb. It began disintegrating, and she began to look around for her savior. She saw a demon walking towards her, chambering another round in the massive rifle he had brought with him. "Looks like we're partners," she chimed while loading another clip into her pistol. "Yeah. Why were you running from those things? Your pistol took care of them pretty quickly." "I did, but the trees would reset the targeting system every time they passed one." It did, but the trees would reset the targeting every time they passed one. I'll fix that later. "Well, you can choose the artifact." Offered Daemon, gesturing to the chess pieces sitting on pedestals. Rosaleen walked over, holstering her pistol and looking over the pieces. After a few minutes of looking, she walked over and picked up a white pawn. He cocked his head to the side, as if questioning. "Well, we're all pawns in the grand scheme of things," she replied, putting the artifact in her backpack. As she was smiling at Daemon, he quickly pointed behind her before reaching for his rifle. She barely had enough time to look behind her and see another Beowulf taking a leap for her. She expected Daemon to be able to kill it in time, but the unthinkable happened. He missed. When she said he missed, it was in relative terms. Sure, it was a hit, but it didn't stop it from attacking. The bullet that Daemon fired went straight through the beast's shoulder, causing it to spin well in the air instead of dying immediately. The Beowulf's claw was knocked out of the way and proceeded to slice Rosaleen's back. The beast died a second later, but the deed was done. Rosaleen's back was opened as the claws had sliced through her fragile body armor. She stood for a second longer before her eyes rolled into the back of her head and she collapsed on the floor. Crap. Daemon dropped his rifle, the expended shell falling to the forest floor, and sprinted to her side. He saw that her eyes had glazed over, and she was shallowly breathing. He checked over the cut and poured some water into the wound, causing it to bubble. Shit, a pierced lung. He applied the med foam that he had in a small med kit. He had on his thigh and sealed the wound. He applied bandages over it and tried to contact Sid. As he tapped his comms on his wrist, he found that for some reason his comms were being blocked. Unless he managed to contact Sid, who actually had the med kit in his backpack. Unless he managed to contact Sid, who had the actual med kit in his backpack. He unattached his cloak module from his backpack and attached it to Rosaleen. He He carried to the center of the ruins and laid her down, activating Cloak as he did so. This is either the stupidest or best idea I've had, or the only one that could save her life. He walked to the center of the clearing, picked up his Kraber as he did, and pulled a flare gun from his left thigh. He raised it into the air and fired, the blinding light of the flare flying up into the air. As he heard many rotors and animalistic sounds coming from the forest, just got to survive. He looked down at his watch. 2 minutes left. He waited, and waited, and waited. After 30 seconds of silence, a massive scorpion-like beast busted out of the tree line, sending the trees flying like twigs. Demon smiled, remembering these beasts from Port's class. Deathstalkers. He raised the Kraber, sighted at its weak spot, and fired. The loud boom of the round discharge filling the clearing. The loud boom of the round discharging filled the clearing. A demon's shoulder nearly shattered from the recoil. The round soared through the air and burrowed into the Deathstalker's eye, followed by another explosion as the round detonated. The result was not as he had expected. Instead of collapsing to the ground, as the round had obviously turned its brain to mush, the Deathstalker clambered back a bit before groaning again and scuttling forward. "You've got to be kidding me." He managed to blow the leg off a Strider Titan once, and yet it had barely damaged this thing. He hastily chambered another round and fired, only for the thing's colossal golden claw to get in the way of its shot. Granted, it did manage to put a dent in the claw. It did little to stop its advance. Before it had a chance to fire again, it brought its stinger down, trying to pierce the thing that was damaging it. He jumped out of the way and brought the Kraber up in the way, trying to deflect the attack. He managed to just avoid it, although his rifle was shredded. Instead of trying to get back at the giant demon, ran under its legs and ran for a couple more seconds before turning to face it again. Gosh, this is gonna kill me for this. Josh is gonna kill me for this. Demon knew he wouldn't be able to win this battle with just his pistol and knife. He would have to cheat. Again. He reached into his pack and pulled out 4 needles. He grumbled as he stabbed them into his 2 legs and arms. After a moment, he was shaking violently, limbs flailing everywhere. It was a miracle he was able to stand. Each of the needles were filled with smuggled stimulants he had brought. On the black market, each enough to almost double the speed and reaction time of a normal human. His muscles burned and his heart rate went through the roof. After a few seconds later, he resumed back to his normal state. He reached up and pulled out the knife, a large 6-inch serrated combat knife made of titanium. He looked into the eyes of the Deathstalker. He stared into the eyes of the Deathstalker before activating his stim. The effects of all the stims finally overtook him, and his other side took over. His killer side. He saw the single enemy and saw it in tunnel vision. It was the only thing he could see, and the only thing he could think about was to kill. He sprinted forward, possibly even challenging RWBY's speed. The Deathstalker was momentarily surprised at his speed, but quickly righted itself by launching another attack. It brought its tail down again, aiming to crush the speeding human, only to find it avoided the attack with ease. Demon didn't even bother to dodge by much, using his heightened reflexes. Time essentially slowed down to a fraction of what he would normally experience. He angled his shoulder in such a way that it would graze the stingers, but he would not have to slow down. After he cleared the appendage, the Deathstalker didn't even have time to recover as he jumped and landed an exoskeleton hand kick right on its head. Without stopping, Daemon kicked off from the assault, seeing a large crack appear in its head armor, and flew back into its stinger. But before it knew what was happening, he was slicing into the weak lines in the tail, and began cutting off the stinger with his knife. In a panic, it began flailing around wildly, trying to fling Daemon off, but to no avail. He hung on tight and saw the stinger completely off, watching as it dropped to the ground. The Deathstalker barely had time to scream before Daemon detached and began attacking its eyes. He jumped off and hung just under its mouth, stabbing its knife into multiple eyes. The Deathstalker was flailing madly, using its pincers to try and dislodge the human, again failing at its endeavor. After he had gouged out every single one of its eyes, he primed a grenade from his belt and chucked it down the scorpion's open maw when it went to scream. He jumped off and used his parkour kit to get out of range of its flailing pincers. A second later, a dull thump was heard as the grenade detonated and the Deathstalker went limp. The skin of the mighty beast began flaking off. As he killed it, he wasn't satisfied with the bloodshed. He needed more. He looked around hungrily, looking for more prey, and it came. At the tree line came 4 more Deathstalkers, looking to avenge their fallen brother. Instead of engaging them, he practically guaranteeing his death, he looked down at his watch and smiled. With a single tap on screen, he watched as a single blue circle appeared on the ground just in front of one of the Deathstalkers. He heard a massive boom overhead, signaling the arrival of the Grimm's doom. Like a falling meteor, his colossal titan smashed into the lead Deathstalker, completely obliterating whatever semblance it had to the real world, forming a small crater underneath it. The other 3 began trying to attack the aforementioned mech, only to be stopped by the reinforced dome shield. Daemon casually walked forward, the Deathstalkers not noticing the smaller figure, and opened the hatch to jump in. He activated the robot and watched it as the screen in front of him activated, showing the militia logo as it did. He felt his helmet link up, and suddenly the colossal titan was an extension of himself. What he did, it did. When he moved, it moved. This was what it was like to be a pilot. He stood up, and so did the titan. All systems nominal, chimed the installed AI, something that took over when Sid was away. When Daemon responded, his voice was twice as deep as normal, being highly affected by the stims he had injected. Give me everything. Sir, I highly advise against... I said everything. All systems active, bringing core abilities online. A large whirring sound filled the cabin as the 3 nuclear reactors powered up. His damage, shield, and dash cores activated with a colossal boom that sounded much like a jet breaking the sound barrier. As the dome shield collapsed around him, a green shield surrounded the mech. Servos on its arms and legs began glowing a deep red, and 2 cone rockets on its back began spewing fire. As the Deathstalker tried to bring its stinger back down on the Titan, he just reached up and grabbed the stinger with his offhand. As he did, he sent a rocket barrage into the Scorpion. That was sent into the back of the Scorpion, turning it into a massive charred corpse. Daemon turned and dashed out of the way of another Deathstalker tail, before shredding it with a burst of fire from his chain gun. It was screeching. Its screeching was cut short by a massive fist crushing its head. The final Deathstalker saw what happened to the other 2 and scuttled back a few paces, trying to assess the threat. Daemon turned from eviscerating Deathstalker and began lumbering towards the last one. As a last-ditch effort, it managed to strike It managed to strike out and grab onto the arms of the mech, immobilizing it, and attacked. It brought its stinger down with full force on the mech, the speed of the strike being able to punch a 3-foot deep hole in the ground. The stinger was aimed right at the sensor node, just in front of where Daemon was sitting. Only it never came. The stinger was stopped right in front of where he was by a great bright green field. Daemon activated the speaker on his Titan, causing his gravelly voice to broadcast outside. All must die. And with that, he grabbed the stinger of the Deathstalker and plunged it into its own head. But he still wasn't finished. He pulled his chain gun arm and unloaded the entire clip into the beast, causing it to be more related to a sponge than a scorpion. As he stepped back from his latest kill, he heard screeching overhead. He turned to see a giant Nevermore, as they were called, flying in for a bombing run. As it fired its feathers at Daemon, he activated his vortex shield and caught 4 of them, sending them back at the bird, piercing its head, causing it to crash into the ground before being finished off by a rocket barrage from the Titan. As Daemon surveyed the battle, he felt the urge. As Daemon surveyed the battlefield, he felt the kill urge dying down within him, and he deactivated his stims, something he would very much regret. As he did, his body couldn't cope with the sudden drop in metabolism and efficiency, and his heart promptly stopped. Daemon collapsed within the Titan, causing the great beast to fall to the ground as well, blood flowing from his mouth and nose. In his last second of consciousness, he had time for one thought: one life for another.
Okay, so I got a new webcam, and I didn't know that it would actually record my face without me telling it to. So, yeah, and I don't feel like recording all that again. It's not much, but I do not feel like and do not have the time to do that again. So, you're stuck with my face. Hope it wasn't too much of a disappointment. Okay, bye.